This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at GoDaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash.
This week on the Linux Action Show, Fedora lit the web on fire when they announced a new deal with Microsoft. But is this just a case of Fedora being pragmatic? Or are they setting the stage for a Microsoft-controlled hardware universe? We debate. Then, podcasting software on Linux. And our thoughts on crowd-funded open source software. And more! Oh, this week, Linux Action Show! And welcome to Linux Action Show, Season 22, Episode number 2. My name is Brian, that guy is Chris.
Well, hello there, Brian. It's down to this, Brian. Run for your life, because Linux is everywhere now. The Patriot Air Drone 2.0.
I love those things.
Runs Linux.
Those are awesome.
This is the new one here, and this is now, I'll warn you, it's like $299.
Well, yeah, the first one was expensive, too.
This is definitely a supreme Father's Day gift or something like that.
Supreme.
But what is extremely awesome about it is that it now has an HD camera mounted to the effing thing, a 720p camera built in, and you can control it with an app, so an iPad app or an Android app.
Yeah.
That you see the screen of the drone as it flies around, and you
control
get
it.
battery status information, you get landing, you get all that kind of stuff, and it can hover in place.
It's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah, it's got 4 brushes that spin, sort of like the big helicarrier in the new Avengers movie. You know, those big propellers that it has? So it's got kind of ones like that. It's got an ARM processor in it, which is kind of funny. It's got an ARM Cortex A8 processor.
A decent one.
800 megahertz, yeah. It's got Wi-Fi in it. Of course, that's how you connect to it with the tablet. It's got a 3-axis accelerometer. It's also got a gyroscope, and the camera is 60 frames per second, which isn't bad, yeah. So there you go. It runs Linux kernel 2.6.32.
So here's what you do. You get one of these. You get one of the Raspberry Pis. You duct tape the Raspberry Pi to the top of it. You put a little extra USB dongle for Wi-Fi on there.
Yeah.
You set the Raspberry Pi to have a nice little torrent server. So you fly the torrent server up to, say, quite high.
That's kind of like what the Pirate Bay guys were talking about doing.
That's what you do.
You could do that, huh? Wow.
Awesome.
That is really cool. So check that out. I did put a link in the show notes if you want to grab this as a Father's Day gift or something like that over at Amazon. It's primable, but it's temporarily out of stock. So if you want it, you better order it now, because
it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Father's Day coming up, everyone's going to have them.
B-Man.
Except for me and Chris. Probably.
We got a show today. There's going to be one for the records. I'll tell you that. We've got some interesting news coming up that kind of is challenging some preconceptions that we'll talk about. In the how-to segment, Matt's going to stop by with podcasting software for Linux.
I disagree with all of that so far, but
it was a heavily requested segment in the Linux Action Show subreddit.
Whoa.
And then we're also going to talk about Fedora's new deal today. The new deal.
Whoa. The
new deal from Fedora. So that's all coming
Whoa.
up. I know.
It's like the 1930s all over again.
Big show.
Big show.
Big show. But before we go on, we have to say good morning to GoDaddy.com and the beautiful Danica Patrick.
I'm going to make a point.
Over at the
It looks like Danica Patrick is still on the front page.
Yeah, I think successfully she has.
Did she win that contest where some other guy was like, "Put me on the front page so you don't look at Danica anymore"?
When I checked on it, she was ahead, but not by a lot. But I'm assuming she kept her lead. I mean, come on, let's be honest.
You're looking right now, right?
Well, no, I mean I will though. I'll find out.
I'll find out before the end of the show, because this is important information everyone needs to know.
Now here is something that's perfect for like a summer project or something you've been thinking about doing, and even like summer project could be like family blog, that kind of thing. GoDaddy's doing a great deal for shared hosting. You get, check this out, B-Man.
Okay.
$1.99 hosting.
What?
$1.99 hosting for 3 months. If you use our code 199Linux when you check out. We got a link in the show notes. 199Linux.
And this is their completely unlimitted shared hosting plan,
this
right?
Is the economy one,
right?
so it's unlimited bandwidth, but you're restricted by 10 gigs of storage space.
Oh, no. My website only gets 10 gigs.
I know, right?
But I can have as much bandwidth as I want.
And 10 MySQL databases and all that kind of stuff. So check it out. We got a link in the show notes.
News.
It's a pretty good price already, but they're going to knock it down to $1.99 if you use our code.
Here's the thing. So I've got the ultimate there.
Yeah.
The The ultimate, I got the ultimate because it technically gives you like unlimited space,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like basically, you know, load this sucker up.
Unlimited databases, unlimited website, unlimited bandwidth.
Now, and I have a lot on my server there, on my little shared server, and it costs me. It's like, I got something for a similar deal. So it's like $8 something a month.
Yeah, for the big boy.
I am coming nowhere near to the 10 gigs of space of the super cheap one.
I know.
So now, like, I'm sticking to the more expensive one just because I already feel like it's so cheap.
Because it's not that expensive.
It's $8 something a month, but it's ridiculous.
I have
seriously 10 gigs.
I went with the
$1 more, you get 150 gigs of website storage.
They offer this deal about
stupidly big.
offer this deal about once a year, and GoDaddy's been supporting the show for a long time now. So about a year ago, they offered a similar deal, and I jumped on it, and that's what I'm running the filterfree.me blog on. It's just I threw it on there. It's low cost. It's super easy push button install to get WordPress. So thank you to GoDaddy for supporting this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. Now I've got a great way. You've toyed with this concept in the past where you just go no cell signal, you go data only.
Data only.
And there is an app for Android that if you have Wi-Fi signal, makes this possible, and it works with Google Voice.
That's nice.
So it's called SipDroid, and I'm actually not 100% sure I haven't talked about it because it's kind of a big deal. So I would think that I've talked about it, but I double-checked the list, and I didn't see it. SipDroid lets you use your Android phone as a SIP device. That's so cool. If you have an existing PBX, like an Asterisk box or some sort of Cisco system or Nortel system, this can connect to that as a client. So you can have your office phone ring your cell phone when you're at like Starbucks on their Wi-Fi. So you have one number there. They also will let you link it up with something that I've used, although only for a limited amount of time. They have a free VoIP PBX service they offer called pbxs.org that actually allows you to link your Google Voice number to their PBX system. So then people can call your Google Voice number and it will ring your phone over SIP. No cell signal required, no cell service, but you do have to have data. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, in the past I've done something almost identical but with Skype.
Yeah.
But now with this, to do it over SIP would be awesome.
Yeah, and this is great. The nice thing about SIP is it ties in with potentially other existing systems around there. I've used this on and off for a year or more maybe.
That's way cool.
So check it out. It's a SipDroid, link in the show notes.
Freaking-tastic.
Link in the live IRC chat room for the wonderful people who've joined us this morning over at jblive.tv 10 a.m. on a Sunday.
I love .tv.10am.sunday.
On Linux Action Show mornings.
.org. So, the app pick this week.
What?
The app pick this week is something a little ridiculous and a little super nerdy. It's called Pablo Draw. Pablo Draw is an ANSI art editor, or ASCII art editor, depending on which you're feeling like. It's very, very old school, but it's got nice versions for all the platforms. The Linux version is fantastic.
Oh, okay.
Look, here's the cool thing about this thing.
All right.
Multi-user ANSI editing. And this is like, it's like 1980s meets collaborative document editing of the nowadays, which is ridiculous. I mean, how often do you ever sitting around thinking, you know what, I could really use to run my BBS and have some nice new animated ANSI screens, but I just need a large team of people to move around those couple of characters with me simultaneously on the same screen connected together over the internet. All the time is the answer.
Yeah, all the time, Brian. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Pretty much 4 to 5 days a week this comes up. So
I think I call you about this topic every day, so you know that already.
Pablo Draw makes that possible, and it's actually really cool. It's a very cool app. Let me click away from
Pablo
this.
Draw.
Pablo Draw is free. It does a whole heck of a lot of stuff. It's kind
of that.
There's a number of nice ANSI editors out there, but this is one of the nicer ones. It's for Linux. You like to click on it.
Okay. One quick note. The Daft Rick, I believe it was in the chat room, also said Groove IP, although they have a light version and a pay version. The pay version is $4.99. He says Groove IP is a little bit easier to use. So, Majo, if you wouldn't mind,
nice.
Majo, if you wouldn't mind adding that to the list as well, then maybe that way people can check out both. I won't make that the official pick because I haven't used it. I've used Droid. used SipDroid, but I like the Daft Rick, and he says this is a good one. So
I trust him.
There you go. All right, B-Man, what do you say we do our random distro this week?
Should you spin the wheel?
All right, Brian.
He loves doing this. He loves it so much.
Doom. Oh, look where it landed, Brian.
Oh, look at this.
Kaspersky Antivirus, Linux to the rescue for Windows.
Linux to the rescue for Windows.
This is a live CD. Now, the Kaspersky guys are the antivirus firm out of Russia that just busted open the Flame virus.
Yep.
And, or Skywiper or Flame or whatever you might know it by. And they offer, I guess, I've never used it, but geez, this thing looks pretty good.
Well, I gotta tell you what, when I got infected by this virus, oh wait, I didn't, because I just run Linux anyway, so I was fine. Yeah,
seriously,
so I didn't even notice that this was happening.
So we'll just really briefly, just quick side note, but so Dooku, Stuxnet, and Flame virus are all Stuxnet's confirmed, and Flame virus is going to be confirmed. All state-created viruses to attack Windows platforms.
Yeah.
What are these people doing running Windows at this point? I mean, it seems like, and I think this is why China has their own Linux distribution.
China's like, yeah, I'm not going to screw around with this.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's too much of a risk.
Ridiculous.
This whole topic is something that we talked a lot about in this week's Unfilter.
Nice.
Excellent. Dude, this week's Unfilter, amazingly good. And we talk about the Flame virus. But I wanted to give props to the Kaspersky guys. If you've got a Windows box that's infested, and it's like one of those things where the file's locked and you just can't get it cleaned off there.
Just boot off of this little live CD. I think there's even you can even put it on a USB flash drive.
Probably. It's Gen 2 based.
Pop right open.
To Gen 2. And you know what? Danica is in our chat room this morning. Danica's in there installing, see, there she goes right there along the top.
Thanks,
installing
Danica.
Gen 2. This live CD is Gen 2 based. Wow.
Gen 2 is getting love.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of Gen 2 love.
All right, B-Man. Well, let's do the news.
What's new in the news this week?
All right, Brian. The Humble Indie Bundle has returned with a triumphant funk about it.
Whoa.
Triumphant
funk.
Well, I'll tell you. The Humble Indie Bundle, number 5, has hit the internet. It's got 11 days, 5 hours left as we record this, so you still got a chance to go grab yourself a copy. Some new games this week, of course. One of which I'll talk about in a little more extensively.
Okay.
But going down here, we got to get to the meat real quick before we continue on, because we got to focus on the positive stuff. The average Linux contribution. Can you see that there, B-Man? What's that
sure
say?
As hell can.
What's that say?
$12.22.
Oh, what's the average Mac contribution?
The average Mac contribution, $9.48.
Oh, Windows?
$7 and something.
So if I'm not a math guy,
no,
I don't do numbers much, but if I get it right here, I think that means the Linux guys here
paying more. Yeah.
Kind of like the 5th time in a row.
Because Linux users are smarter, better educated,
right,
and have better jobs.
And more appreciative.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about what's in the bundle. First of all,
smarter.
The bundle's getting a pretty good reception, especially from the Windows users out there. Now, there is some controversy around the Humble Indie Bundle, and that is that the Limbo app wasn't actually ported to Linux. And that is, sort of the Humble Indie Bundle's
thing, is everything for every platform without DRM.
Right. Limbo instead has been wrapped in a very customized not port, but
just a wine wrapper
mod by Crossover. The Crossover dudes made it specific. Now that's got some people upset. That, however, hasn't stopped the fact that the thing has done bonanzas. In the first 2 days, they got $2.5 million.
Some good games.
Yeah, definitely some good games this time around. Also, Canonical's working with the Humble Indie Bundle to get those apps in the Ubuntu Software Center,
which is cool.
Now,
it's a cool way to go.
I was curious to see if Canonical would bring forward the set your own price thing, because that was something that you'd been curious about in the past with your software. But they just have hard set prices.
Yep.
And they're doing a deal where every 5,000 likes that an app gets on the Ubuntu App Store directory page or whatever it is, they're going to give like $100 to the bundles.
That's nice.
Cool to see it in there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why you might actually want to buy it from the Ubuntu Software Center if they're also supplying the update that way, because I've seen some reports that a couple of the ports are a little buggy still, and they're likely going to do some more sound fixes to the Crossover port. And so if they're going to be releasing new updates, it'd be nice just to have that managed through the Software Center. So that is one advantage to doing it that way.
Way nice. Yeah.
Outside of that,
I don't know if there's any particular reason to do it outside of that, but it's way nice. I like what they're doing there. I like getting more stuff in the Software Center, so I'm pro it.
Yeah. Yep. So there you go. The Dark Descent, and now you have
good games. Good games. And honestly, I don't really have a big problem with them just wrapping one of the games in wine. For the most part, I mean, these are all DRM-free games anyway, and all of the other ones have native Linux ports.
Yeah.
The fact that there's one game, which in my opinion is the weakest of the games. And it's still a good-looking game. Right. I haven't really played it, but it's the least interesting to me.
I haven't played this bundle yet myself.
But the rest of the games are just phenomenal, and I just don't really see why it would be a real problem. Now, I look at it this way.
Yeah.
a lot of people out there, do you guys like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis games from the old days?
Yeah.
Do some of you guys use emulators to play some of those games?
Yeah.
Well, how is that any different than loading this, wind up and playing this game? It's a video game. I don't really care how it gets running.
And the one that people are, at least in
it's just a video game. It's not like we have to worry about having like native looking buttons and themes. It's a friggin' video game.
People in the chat room and in the Reddit were most excited about Psychonaut.
Good name.
Psychonauts.
Good game.
Yeah. So that's Linux native.
Yep.
But the whole
even if you ignore the one game that's wrapped in Wind, which honestly I've made fun of games for being wrapped in Wind before, so I do prefer to be Linux native. But I mean, really, it still seems worth it even if you ignore that game.
The whole thing that I find interesting. Okay, so obviously we have a sincere pattern where Linux users are willing to pay more for games. Also, Linux users are willing to hit those extra nuts in order for a Kickstarter project to go Linux port.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing now a verifiable, repeated pattern of Linux users willing to shell out this extra money.
Yeah.
So, as someone yourself who has just started a donation process, is this kind of are you hoping to realize some of that, I guess, extra energy behind the willingness to do that now? Because it's, to me, seems like now would be the time to capitalize on a thing like that. I'm just wondering if that's kind of where, because you've got to be watching this too, since we cover the news every single day.
Let's talk about this a little bit.
All right.
Let's talk about this a little bit. So if you guys haven't been following what I've been up to this week, this last Monday, the day after the last Linux Action Show, I announced a plan to attempt to open source everything that I make.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm saying, okay, Illumination Software Creator, my game creation suite, my video games, Linux Tycoon, everything, open source under GPL. That's the plan. And I kind of took a step back and I was looking at things like the Humble Indie Bundle. I was looking around at, we've talked a bit about ways to monetize and support open source development in the past.
I mean, we've talked about also, like, I look at things like the Adore project. Like
Ardor,
we just covered that story where the Adore project guy's like, I'm not really making enough money.
I'm having to do contract work just to pay the bills, a lot of other things. And so I thought long and hard about this because I've kind of poo-pooed on various models of supporting open source software in the past because I'm a practical guy. I like to see that something works before I try it. And then I realized we don't know if a lot of these processes are going to work until someone hops in with enough media backing and enough people watching to give it a try and see if it's going to work. So I sat down and I thought about, okay, what is the most general way to support open source software? So I thought, well, what about support contracts? A lot of people talk, release open source software and charge for support. But really, that doesn't work for video games. That doesn't work for real end user commercial software. It really only works for enterprise level stuff. So I'm like, okay, so that's a no-go because what I really want to do is I wanted to show that anyone making anything open source and GPL'd could make money this way.
What do you think about the approach where some people say the core application, take like Illumination Software Creator. Illumination Software Creator is free. Then you set up a series of plugins that add functionality. Like, so Android ability would be something somebody buys for $4.99.
And you know what? For Illumination, that would work great.
Yeah.
But what about for like a video game? So like I make Linux Tycoon. Well, so do I give people a partial game and then let them play the rest of the game and have downloadable content that's proprietary? But then they're still only getting some of the source. They don't get all of the game as open source.
And so it doesn't
it doesn't work for all applications anyway. And then there's the other option that was thrown around was, well, what if you release the source code as GPL, but you charge for people to download the binaries? And then I thought, well, that just doesn't make any sense because then Canonical and Red Hat and everyone else can bundle the app up and compile it and put it in their repository. And there's really, it kind of undermines the ability to earn a living at it. And so I looked around. I was like, who is actually making a living making commercial, like consumer software, like games and stuff that just the average person uses, open source and making a living on it? And there's really not much out there. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try doing contributions where I say, here we go. I'm going to set up a page. And if we can hit a certain level in contributions, in recurring donations, I'm going to open source everything. I'm going to open source the hell out of it, make these community projects. And then in turn, I will become a full-time, fully funded developer on the project so that they can continue development of them. And then the community has more control, more ownership, more freedom, however you want to think about it. And if that contribution model worked, we could then publish all the statistics, how much traffic I got, how much press I got, and how much donations that actually turned into, and then put that all online. So someone who wanted to do something similar could say, you know what,
look at the data.
I can get like half of that press. I may not be able to go on the Linux Action Show and talk about it for 3,000 years like Brian can. I may not, have his website. I may not do all these other things, but I make a pretty cool piece of software, so I can probably get like half the traffic. So they can say, okay, you know what? So maybe I'll get half that amount of donations. Is that doable for me? Where I live, regardless of the community, is that cost of living going to work for me? So then we will have an actual case study where people can say, yes, I can make a living and support my family using making GPL software. And I wanted to be able to show people.
What is it? What's the conclusion if it doesn't work?
Here's the thing. If it doesn't work for me, it doesn't mean it won't work for other people. So either way, here's what I'm doing. If you go to lunduke.com,
never heard of it.
There's a couple blog posts about it right now. So here's what I'm doing. I'm publishing pretty much daily updates of how much income's coming in so far of recurring donations. I've set a deadline for this coming Monday. End of day this coming Monday, I wanted to hit $4,000 in monthly contributions. The thought being...
That's quite a bit.
The thought being, well, honestly...
I guess if you figure...
It's a significant drop in income for me.
If you figure, like, what? So $2 a person...
$2 a person for 2,000 people.
2,000 people.
Which honestly is a fraction of my social network followers, let alone Linux Action Show viewers and people buying my software.
That's not a big number.
And it's not a big number. It's a very small number, and it's a significantly smaller number than what I currently earn in selling my software in a proprietary way. But it's enough where I could make a living. So my hope would be that, we could bring in more than this, and then I could make a comparable living to what I make now, and possibly even pay other developers to assist with it as well. So we're going to try and make this work. The deadline I set is just an arbitrary random deadline, just to see if I could come up with something. Because honestly,
if you leave it indefinite, then...
As long as I'm doing this, I'm not making real sales. So I decided I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to try it. I'm not going to wait for someone else to come in and try this. I'm not going to wait for the Free Software Foundation or someone else to give me a business plan that's viable. I'm going to go ahead and try it. I'm going to put all of my software on the line. I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm not going to put one pinky toe in. I'm going to jump in all with both feet, and we're going to try this. And if it doesn't work, then we still have all the stats. I'm going to release all of the stats, and maybe it'll work for someone living in a different locale, or maybe it'll work for someone who doesn't have a family to support, but they can kind of get started this way. It still will be beneficial information for everyone to have.
If you got like almost there, I'd look at that number and go, well, time to move.
Well, no. So here's what I'm thinking. So as of right now, let me bring up the website here. We are at roughly, because I've been keeping track, as of June 1st, which was Friday. As of Friday morning, we were at $1,200 in contributions, which is about 30% of the way there, which isn't enough. Right. I mean, it's not enough. It's not enough to get there. But right after this, we had a great write-up over on omgubuntu.co.uk.jpl. wherever they are at. But those guys, they wrote a great write-up on it, an absolutely phenomenal write-up on OMG Ubuntu, and I think there was a little boost after that. Yeah. I haven't tallied the numbers since then because it's the weekend, but on Monday morning, I'm going to retally everything, post all the last informations for that final stretch into the end of the day Monday, and we'll see where we're at. If we just, like, I set the line to be $4,000. If we hit like 3,900 by the end of the day Monday, I'm not going to throw my arms up and go, well, that didn't work. I guess that's it for open source. It's all done. I mean, at that point, I'll just be like, okay, so we'll just extend this by a day and we'll call it good. I mean, there's no hard and fast thing here. It was really just, let's see what we can pull off in a week. All right. Because if we can achieve the goals we need to achieve for 1 month in a week, we're doing really well. And hopefully, my hope is I'll publish all the information. That will work. Mm-hmm. People will get all of my software in GPL. We can get my software, which includes visual programming tools and Linux Tycoon and everything, into every random distro on the planet. And that will give people more fun, more things to do, more tools to build with, and will show other people who want to take their closed source software open source how to do it.
It'd be cool to get them
specifically.
It'd be cool if they could be in the repos
from a practical time frame.
Wouldn't that
wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if like random distros shipped Linux Tycoon by default as a default app? I mean, Come on. I mean, it just makes sense. But so a lot of people have brought up negatives to this, and I wanted to throw a few things out there because this is a community issue.
Okay.
And this is something we all need to figure out and make work. It's not just a one guy doing it sort of thing. A lot of people have said, well, what if you get $4,000 a month in contributions now?
Yeah.
You release everything open source, and then next month everyone cancels it.
Right.
And I'd say to everyone who says that absolutely could happen. Of course it could happen. But that's the same issue I have now selling proprietary software. If I don't continually come out with new and interesting features, if I don't have new releases that are really exciting and make people think, you know what, I want to keep buying this stuff, my sales drop off. So next month, I earn zero in sales if my software is not quality. If the software is not amazing and doing really cool stuff and the games aren't fun to play, it doesn't matter if it's closed source or open source. I still don't make sales.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter. In fact,
kind of the same thing.
From a certain standpoint, this is actually more stable sounding for me. Because if we get 4,000 in recurring donations, and those people donate month to month, and after a few months, they're like, he's just not pulling through. There's not enough cool features that matter for me. Then they cancel. That's still better than if someone buys my software once and then's like, I'm never buying it again because he's not that cool.
You get more of a direct feedback.
I get more direct feedback. Yeah. I get more involvement from the community. I get more community ownership, and I get a more stable income. And hopefully, I can publish all that information. I'm going to try and make this as transparent as I possibly can. Like, I'm going to publish everything, charts and all, and get it out there, and other people can do something similar. Hopefully this succeeds. So go over to lunduke.com. There's several blog posts here about it right now. The top couple of blog posts are all about this, with a nice pixelated Linux Tycoon penguin icon half the time. And there's links where you can do monthly contributions of varying types, any types from $2 all the way up to $100 a month, which no one has done yet. Yeah. To be fair, I wouldn't do it for $100 a month, but you know what? But I would hop in for $5 a month. Absolutely. Like if someone made something I want, I'll hop in for $5. Like I donate to the Ardour guy because he makes something cool. I don't give him $100 a month, but I give him something that's worthwhile.
Right.
So I'm hoping that this works out well, because then everything I make goes open source, and as many people have pointed out, that would make me positive in the freedom dimension.
Oh, that's always good.
So someone asked Richard Stallman about what he thinks of this.
Yeah.
Richard Stallman just said that he couldn't get behind it yet because in my initial blog post, I didn't specifically use the phrase free software. Which I'm like, you know what? I almost should go back and just add it in and just say, you're welcome, Richard.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Update note at the bottom for Richard.
Update, Richard. You know what? Because honestly, I don't care what words are used. You guys can call whatever you want. The fact of the matter is, let's make this all GPL released. That would be really awesome, I think, for everyone involved. And
it makes me want chips and guacamole, and that's a good sign, I figure.
Actually, you know what the biggest source of interest has been so far? Haiku users. Haiku users are jumping on board because they want to play Linux Tycoon and use Illumination on Haiku. So they're like, we'll help port it. That'd be great. Great. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, lunduke.com, guys. And if you don't have cash to donate, help spread the word. Let's make this stuff open source.
So, talking about negative in the freedom dimension, B-Man. Mr. Torvalds took to Google Plus this week, and he likes to tear it up from time to time. This week, he took a poke at GNOME 3 and Fedora 17. I'll just read the highlights because, well, it's a long one. Look at that. Look at the length of that thing.
That man has an opinion.
That's a blog post.
That's a blog post.
It's
a good one too.
Everybody remembers that Linus has a MacBook Air, which he runs OpenSUSE on, but he also has a desktop, which he runs Fedora 14 on. However, Fedora 14 has an ancient version of X that doesn't contain all the fixes that he wants for his Intel 3D card, so he decided to take the upgrade to Fedora 17.
Good move.
He knew it would include GNOME 3, but he figured he could handle it, especially with gnomeextensions.org.
Yep.
So he has some immediate issues, like it feels like one step back, one step forward kind of situation.
That's all right.
Has complaints about how you adjust font sizes, but he heads over to extensions.gnome.org, and he then proceeds to run into a bunch of compatibility issues with extensions. And all the favorite extensions that he wants don't install. So he gets pretty upset about that. He also was really pissed that he can't just quickly edit icons in the launcher because he just wants to add a couple of command line flags to Chromium. And then he goes on, of course, to rag on Fedora 17 a bit, too. He also has quite a bit of... One of the reasons I'm not reading this is because there's quite a bit of swearing.
Yeah, he really has an opinion. I think it's funny. He's been running Fedora. Like, he's a Fedora user.
Yeah.
And he looked at Fedora 17 and GNOME 3, and he just gets pissed pissed.
Yeah.
I have hated Fedora for years, practically. I look at Fedora 17, and I do a little happy dance, and I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well,
I just think that's funny to me.
To be fair, Linus has been ripping on GNOME for a long
bit.
long time.
This is something new. I know.
This mailing list post comes from Linus, December 12th, 2005. He says, I just personally encourage people to switch to KDE. This users are idiots and are confused by functionality mentality of GNOME is a disease. If you think your users are idiots, only idiots will use it. I don't use GNOME because I'm striving to be simple. In striving to be simple, it has long since reached the point where it simply doesn't do what I need to do. Please, just tell people to use KDE.
You know, he does have a point. If you do make your system for idiots, idiots will be the ones using your system. He's right about that. I mean, he is right about that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a little funny.
Well, of course, now Linus is getting all outspoken.
He hates usability things. Like, man, he just goes. He's like, what? The printer dialogue is awful in OpenSUSE. I hate you guys.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he just gets upset. And honestly, I kind of respect him for that. Like, I respect the man having such a distinct opinion.
Maybe he feels like I'm working my butt off on this kernel, and you guys can't do better up there in the user space.
Your printer dialogue is this bad?
All right, so
I just want him to be pissed off about printer dialogue.
The Linux Action Show subreddit was rocked this week, B-Man, when Richard Stallman made a fairly pragmatic post over on the gnu.org/philosophy/nonfree-games.html page. Richard's writing because a well-known company, Valve,
also known as the center of the internet,
right?
Yeah,
where it all began and where it will all end. A company like a well-known company such as Valve that distributes non-free computer games, this is Richard, with digital rights restriction management, recently announced it would distribute these games for GNU Linux. Actually, that part didn't actually.
That didn't actually.
That was a rumor. That still is a rumor. I mean, we're hoping. Yeah. But anyways, it's okay, Richard. It's okay. I suppose the availability of popular non-free games on GNU/Linux can boost adoption of the system. However, our goal goes beyond making the system a success. Its purpose is to bring freedom to the users. Thus, the question is now, how does this development affect users' freedom? He goes on to say, in the end, not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Bring Steam to
he's
Linux.
like, oh, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Okay, I see that. I was like, well, really?
So,
really?
Remember when I asked him, would you just prefer that Canonical and Red Hat didn't exist?
Yeah.
And instead of release non-free software, he said yes.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
But Valve comes along.
Well, maybe he really likes Half-Life. Maybe like Portal's a big deal for Richard. And Portal is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right about that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he's just a huge Portal fan. So no, that makes sense.
He does go on to say any GNU/Linux distro that comes with the software to offer these games will teach users the point is not freedom. Non-free software in GNU/Linux distros already work against freedom goals. Adding these games to distro would augment that effect. So he's got strong words. People include it.
Strong words. But overall, actually, I kind of liked that post. It was nice to see a good side of Richard where he's like being a little more thoughtful about the good and the bad and weighing the good with the bad. I liked that. That was nice.
Maybe that trip to the hospital made him rethink a few things.
Well, I think it was his time with the Linux Action Show.
Yeah.
He just had a nice talk with Chris and Brian. He's like, you know what? We disagreed, but I think we can come together on a couple of core issues, and boom, there we go. See that? Brian's going positive freedom dimension. Richard's getting all practical and pragmatic. The universe is coming together. Hell is freezing over, and penguins are flying out of everyone's butts. It's fantastic.
And Silverlight is coming to an end, especially on Linux.
Thank God.
So you remember Xamarin, right? This is Xamarin. This is Miguel Idicaza's venture when he left
his
Novell.
Moonlight, his Mono Moonlight, whatever company.
He actually didn't bring Moonlight. That was the Silverlight implementation. Moonlight stayed at Novell, and Novell has done nothing with it for a year. And Miguel, in an interview on May 29th, said that essentially he went on to say that it's been abandoned completely.
Okay.
And that it's just he also knows that Silverlight has not gained much adoption on the web, so it didn't come as a must-have technology that I thought it would become. He also goes on to lament. He goes on to say that Microsoft has placed artificial restrictions on Silverlight and made it useless for desktop programming. He also said we no longer believe that Silverlight is a suitable platform for write once, run anywhere technology, as there are too many limitations for it to be useful.
No, he's not wrong.
No, Silverlight's just flop, huh?
Yeah,
I mean,
Silverlight just didn't go anywhere.
But thanks Netflix because you're using it still.
Yeah, Netflix is the whole reason for Silverlight, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. All right. Well,
that'll go away.
Just a quick mention for Mageia. I was asked this week during one of our other shows to give Mageia a shout out on the Linux Action Show. Mageia 2 is going to be arriving soon with GNOME 3 and System D. And you're going to get your regular things like GNOME 3.4, KDE 4.8.2, XFCE 4.9. It's going to have Linux kernel 3.3.6 and NVIDIA drivers in there. I'm going to save the Mageia discussion, though. I have more stuff on Mageia in just a minute. Oh, actually, why don't we just bump it? Mageia comes full circle, B-Man. So we talked about Mandriva.
We did.
And they're doing their we're going to the community thing.
Which is cool.
So our question was what does this mean for Mageia?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they've been discussing things back channel-like on the DL, Mageia and Mandriva. And Mandriva kind of went to Mageia and said, why don't you come on over? We'll just fold you back in home. Yeah. And, you guys are going to be comfortable here? Yeah. It's nice. And the water's warm. Mageia thought about it, and they said, guys, go F yourself. Go F yourself. We've already got ourselves an established governance board. We've already got a shipping product. We like the way things are going for us now. We left you already. I don't know if they actually said go F yourself. No, but I kind of like that. You like that? Yeah. Go F yourself. I don't remember reading that in that post. Right. I know. Actually, they all seem like they were very civil about it. Yeah. But basically, they decided they're already set up. They're ready to go. They're going. They're just going to stay separate. We have invested a lot of time and energy over many conversations and discussion to define Mageia on several levels. We continue to release updates and the betas for RCs and Mageia 2, and we regularly put out our contributions back into the Linux ecosystem. He also went on to say that they don't really have anything defined yet, and they weren't just going to turn themselves over to some vaguely defined entity that doesn't have any structure in place. It's kind of smart. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, honestly, the new Mandriva open community thing is kind of nothing just yet. Just yet, yeah. At least as far as I can tell. It's a transition. Yeah, they're just going to go somewhere. One of the things that Mandriva has decided they're going to do, which I think is interesting, is they are going to base their Mandriva server product on Mageia. So Mandriva server will be built on top of Mageia. Yeah. Which makes sense. Honestly, that's what I would do if I were them. Why not just base it on top of Mandriva? But I mean, Mageia, honestly, my guess is the next Mandriva is probably going to be based on Mageia initially. I mean, because why not? I mean, Mageia just branched off, kept going, and kept doing a good job. That's interesting. Yeah, they kind of actually insinuate. So why not fold that back in? I mean, it's already, all the changes are right there. Just utilize them and continue in your own way if you really want to. I think you might be right, B-Man. All right, well, let's talk about something that's kind of interesting from the Linux Mint camp. So they had Linux Mint 13, but the voters, the poll was that we weren't going to review it this week, so we're not. But they have announced that soon they will be shipping a mini Mint PC. Look at this little guy. This tiny little guy, smaller than a Mac Mini, AMD CPU up to 1.66 or 1.65 dual gigahertz, or dual core. Dual Radeon HD graphics, 4 gigs of RAM, 250 gig hard drive, dual head display, HDMI out, so maybe good for a media center. 2 eSATA ports. And, that's the part I dug. Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and a ruggedized metal case. 2 eSATA ports, which would make this a great little server. Yeah. This would be a good little server. Yeah. 2 eSATA ports, or really, honestly, with HDMI out, you could make it a media center box too. Now, media center and server. A non-branded version is currently selling for €425 or $589. Yeah. So we don't know what the price of this one's going to be, but it's probably going to be somewhere around there. Basically, the way it'll work is somebody's putting together this for Mint. Mint will get a small portion of the purchase. That's nice. And it's sort of like a small way to support Mint and get yourself a machine. People are complaining that it's only 165 gigahertz for $600. And the price is a little high. But you do kind of pay a premium for that tiny mini form factor. You know what, though? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unless it was a lot more powerful, honestly, at that price, I could get something larger for, that was 5 times as powerful for $100 less, or I could go get a whole giant stack of Raspberry Pis for half the price. If you put an i3 or an i5 in this box, then I'm interested. Yeah. Then I'm interested. Then I think it's a little more reasonable. For this, I think this is great. I'm not going to buy one. In pounds, not euros. I'm sorry. I said pounds. Euros. Yeah. It's because it's funny money to me. We can't spend it here, guys. I mean, I could learn it, but it sounds like it's only going to be around for a couple more weeks anyway. So I'm kidding. You guys know I'm kidding. It's not a funny thing. It's not a funny thing.
That's exactly what we need. We need everyone in Europe to hate us.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I know. It's rough. It's rough out there. All right, well.
It's hard.
So maybe this iteration isn't for me, but if I was really a hardcore Mint user and I wanted to support the Mint project.
This is a great way to go.
Yeah, I think
honestly, if I was crazy about Mint, I would get one of these just to have a Mint machine on my desk.
Yeah, a Mint machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be way cool.
So what do you say while we're, before we go talk about Fedora's new deal, why don't we kick it over to Matt? He's got a podcasting software roundup, and I don't believe he shied away, B-Man, from video podcasting either, although I could be wrong.
That couldn't possibly be the case.
And of course, people who've been watching for a little while know that System 76, the awesome guys over at System 76, who build lots of really nice Linux rigs, are sponsoring these segments. They sent Matt a Wild Dog performance, and he's doing all of these demos on this Wild Dog. Rig. I know, man. And it's you know what? The other thing about it.
And I just wanted to say to System 76, it's okay, guys. I understand that this one got delayed through the U.S. Postal Service by a little bit. I'm just happy that mine will be arriving in a few days. I'm just going to say it's okay that it got delayed. You can stop apologizing to me profusely that it was delayed slightly.
Is that a thing? You're hoping?
If I put it out in the universe, it might be a thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like if you put it out there enough times, it happens, you know?
Yeah,
you put out positivity. I'm kind of feeling like this is paying it forward, except instead of paying it forward, I'm just asking the universe for it.
Yeah. There you go.
And we'll just see how that works. Yeah. I'm not really sure.
Could be magic.
It could be magic.
Take it away, Matt.
Hey, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about producing a podcast in Linux and actually being able to do so using Linux software. Believe it or not, it's actually not as hard as it looks. The most difficult part of it, I think, is getting used to using new software. Now, for those of you that are wanting to learn how to get started in podcasting, this is the episode of In an In-Depth Look you're going to want to take a look at because it's absolutely fantastic and it has all the highlights that are important to understanding whether or not you should even be getting involved in such a thing. And I speak from experience in this because I've had my hand at a few podcasts, and some were more successful than others. So something to bear in mind. And the link, of course, is in the in-depth look area. And just look for starting a podcast. It's definitely worth checking out. So there's that. Definitely check that out. Chris did a fantastic job, as did Angela, at actually pointing out all the things that you need to do to get started on that. Now, podcasting in today's world means either audio or video, or sometimes a little of both, depending on how you're set up. There are a number of applications you can use to generate a podcast. And generally speaking, when it comes to equipment, that's going to be a question I would direct more toward Chris as far as the proper microphone and that type of setup. However, if you're like me and you're just doing it from your home office and you're not really too concerned about it being uber fantastic and you don't need any fancy screens or anything, you can actually just use a USB headset. And we are going to actually jump into our screen here, and I'm going to show you a little demo project that I put together with Audacity. And Audacity for editing audio is, in my opinion, where it's at, just because it's simple and it's really, really easy to do. In our sample project here, and I don't believe you guys are set up to hear anything that I play on this, so it won't really make any difference. But if I was to hit play, it will run through its little bit there. And you'll also notice that I have a blank space in this particular project, and I have something new in this particular project. What this is this is one piece of recording that I actually made from a podcast itself, and then this is an effect that I wanted to add into the podcast as I wanted to with this extra effect here. Audacity is very simple to do. Adding effects is a matter of simply finding ones that you're licensed to use, whether it be through a royalty-free website, or there's a variety of sources out there. And I'll make sure there's some options in the show notes that I've used in the past, various free sound, royalty-free stuff there, that you can get some cool effects. And those are helpful for when you're doing intros and things of that sort. So the main thing here is that you'll note that I want to place this effect into my stream. So I'm going to basically... see how that does a little yellow line up there. Come up here, and I'm going to click Generate Silence. So, yeah, that looks fine. And now, when I play, it will actually include the effect in that particular stream. Now, I realize that I'm kind of giving you a bit of a crash course in Audacity here, and this isn't by any means a full detailed thing, but it's basically demonstrating how simple Audacity is to use. It's really, really brain dead easy. So when it comes to editing audio, I'm a big fan of Audacity. It's real nice. You can fade in and out real smoothly between your tracks. It's just the way to go. I think it's fantastic. So for editing audio, Audacity is where it's at, and it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to go ahead and close that out. I'm going to click no on that. The next thing I want to talk about is actually editing with video. That's a little more detailed. That's a little more in depth. And for the sake of this particular segment, it's going to be a little more visual. So let's jump back in, and we will now let's go ahead and start off with our OpenShot editing project, because that's where a lot of the intro magic and things that I had set up take place. As you can see here on the screen, I'm going to play that. And you can see that there is a little intro thing here. That was actually some 3D text that I generated for this little segment. Basically, this isn't actually a legitimate podcast in this particular case that I'm putting together in these editing projects, so much as it is a collaboration of various projects I've put together over time. These projects range in dating back to 2003 to current, but gives you a brief idea. So jumping back into it, as you can see here, I have the intro right here at the top that I made with the Blender 3D editing program. And here I'm apparently cleaning out my ears, and I'm going to jump into a little intro as if I'm doing a news show. Again, all this is done right here in OpenShot, real simple to do. And that was, of course, done with the Blender as well. Same thing with that there. And now we're going to come up to a wipe that's going to bring in our little penguin friend, as if, again, we're doing a news show. Very simple. And bear in mind, the whole thing was done with OpenShot. Very, very easy. So after I exported that into something I could work with in my next video editor, I then switched to Kdenlive. Now, I know no one likes to bounce from one video editor to the other, but unfortunately, each editor has strengths that the other one does not. Kdenlive has a lot of advanced control. However, its titling is pretty mediocre. OpenShot's titling just destroys anything I've used anywhere else. However, its editing tends to be a little simpler. So we're going to now jump into Kdenlive with the project that I exported from OpenShot. Okay, let's load that up. And as you can see here, I've got a lot going on. I've got the project that I named Finished up here in my clip drawer here. And that was what I exported, or I'm sorry, Podcast New was what I exported from OpenShot. And then Finished was a collaboration of things that I've worked on since probably about 2003 that I put together to basically provide you guys something I could show you if I'm playing this just through the clips. And again, you'll recognize some of this in the window here. I'm going through the whole shmew. And you'll notice that there's some movement with a secondary screen up here at the top. And I did that with some effects. Now let's actually jump into that. I used the composite effect. And what I did is I basically added a video that I wanted it to transition to. And in this particular case, I did composite to video, and I did it composite to the video 1, which is going to be the compilation of stuff I did since 2003. That's all fine and good, but what does that really look like, and how did I get it to move that way? By starting out with compositing, you can actually slide this back over toward the beginning, and I actually started off with my little box here. I moved that to where I wanted to start it off with. Then I came back in here a little sooner, and I moved the box again, like so. Now let's watch what happens when I play it. You'll see it move. This is kind of cool. Check this out. Now you'll notice that the box should start moving here pretty shortly. May take a minute. You'll notice there's a little bit of resizing there, and see it slide. This is helpful if you're doing kind of a news type podcast, in that it gives you some control both on secondary picture-in-picture video, especially if you're working with pre-recorded stuff, in addition to being able to maneuver it where you want, either in real time or in more of a static fashion. As far as what that's going to look like when you've exported everything the way you want it and you've worked with the audio the way you want it, let's go ahead and close that out. Whoops. There we go. All right. This is a finished product that I put together through the collaboration video, as well as some stuff that I did just for the segment. And it's basically showing off different effects that you can use using Linux software. And I by no means have time today to encompass every single thing that I did, but a lot of it is just simply editing music, sound channels, the fact that you do not have to do audio at the same time that you're doing video if you're working with video. The picture-in-picture that you will see in this upcoming video was actually done with video recorded on one set and audio being recorded by a professional audio engineer separately that I then dubbed in by lining up, basically lip syncing with the audio. It really wasn't that hard using Kdenlive. So this is what I came up with using OpenShot and Kdenlive, as well as some stuff from 2003. You will see a Windows XP desktop in this. However, I assure you that all of this was edited using Linux. Period. The entire thing. This particular comedian at the top, I have rights to use all this stuff because I'm the one that helped put much of this together. So won't get into specifics other than that, but let's just say it's all on the up and up. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on. And here in a moment, it's going to flash down to full screen, the picture-in-picture. Again, thanks to the compositing. Easy to do. You can transition that in and or out, but as soon as it ends, it will then pop in as such. This was a test podcast from, I think, about 2003, 2004 that I'd put together that was launched, but then promptly kind of went to pot just based on circumstances. And as you can see, shaky text, again, that was something you can either outsource or you can try and do yourself if you want, if you have the patience. It takes a little bit of work, but it can be done with Kdenlive and other software. And you can see us flashing into another show rather than podcast that I'd put together. Again, very simple effects that you can do in Linux that are not overly difficult. There's a lot of sound and music that goes to this because music's an important part of this. But as you can see, you don't have to be a master of editing to make this stuff very compelling. And I will definitely say it's more compelling to watch with sound, but you get the general idea. There's a few effects coming up here. You got some green screen going on. All this can be done with software in Linux. And the Muppets are strictly voluntary. All right, moving into... Okay, we're coming into close. This was actually done as a fan film for a convention here in Seattle. We have a GNOME that transports in. You see the old Windows XP desktop there when I was dual booting. And you see me talking, so on and so forth. And you'll see basically it's skipping back and forth a little bit. Again, creative editing, back when I was living single in my old apartment before I was married. And you'll notice that we're now moving into a workout scene. Again, this was very, very early in my editing, but you can tell that this is very, very doable. So you get the general idea. And again, it's all about perspective. He's pulling. And if you'll wait a minute, you'll see him coming up. Again, it's all about timing and editing. The biggest takeaway I would suggest to you guys when you're looking at this is to really realize that creating a podcast in Linux is nothing more than, obviously you have to have a topic and you have to have something to say, but also as far as putting together the podcast itself, the content creation itself is, most of it's going to come from your heart and the rest of it's going to come from creative ideas, music, being able to have something compelling to say and so on and so forth. That's really not physically hard. I'd say the hardest part of it's probably coming up with the actual content itself, but the actual putting it together isn't really that bad. And I'll make sure that the steps that I use to put together this stuff will be included in the show notes so that you can see how certain effects can be done rather easily without having to boot up into a Windows partition. It's actually pretty cool. So there's that. Can't really think of anything other than, well, actually, yeah, there's a pretty big piece, distribution. Almost forgot a very important piece of that. How do you get your podcast to folks that are going to get it on RSS and iTunes and such? Let's put into that. Okay. Let's boot into this here. Hang on. Yes, I know that it's showing this. I'm not really too worried about it, though. That's okay. Okay. This is a service called Hipcast. And Hipcast is kind of a nice out-of-the-box, I made some content and I want to get it to people kind of service. What's cool about it is that you can actually pop into do video or audio or however you want to do it. You can put it up a few different ways. Obviously, you can either upload it yourself or you can record it on the fly. I recommend uploading it because it will render better and it will frankly look better. The players themselves for the content, let me jump into video so I can actually have something to show you here. We'll jump into this guy here, see if what that looks like. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a very small video player, but it also provides you with an actual download link that works with enclosures and such, so that if you are working with iTunes or you're working with other types of services, you can distribute that pretty easily. So basically, you take your XML feed and you basically drop that into your blog or whatever you're distributing with, and it's pretty much a done deal. It's really cool because it handles all the description, editing, and all that stuff right here in each individual file. You can basically drop in whatever you want. This particular stuff comes back, looks like some of this is from the Wheezy and the Swish days, back when I was working behind the scenes in that podcast. So some of the content's probably a little dated, but it gives you an idea. You can even pick your preview image. It has a lot of YouTube-like functionality, but it's going back to an era before YouTube was as big as it was, because there was a time to where it was your problem to figure out where you're going to host your video and get it distributed. YouTube wasn't really as big of an option at the time. So I think it still has a lot of value in it if you're looking at distributing to people that aren't necessarily wanting to get it from YouTube and want to actually have something that can be downloaded easily from iTunes or maybe Podcatcher or one of the Linux-specific applications for podcast capturing. However, if your audience is using Mac, Linux, and Windows, obviously you want to make sure you're compatible with everybody. So this is one option. It's pretty cool. And again, I'll provide the show notes for it. There's not a lot to show here. It's pretty lackluster to look at, but as you can see, you've certainly got some interesting your RSS feeds and so on and so forth. Got the old Wheezy and the Swish goodies here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't even know if we still have the old iTunes settings in here and all that. Looks like we don't. Okay, so the next thing is if you're looking to actually broadcast something live and you're wanting to do audio, for instance, something that's real easy to do would be to use TalkShoe. TalkShoe isn't necessarily the most awesome solution in the universe, but it's probably the easiest. TalkShoe is free, and at least I believe it's free last time I looked. And if it's not free, it's going to be quite cheap. And what's cool is it also allows people to call in and participate in your program, and signing up is easy, and they can participate live, and it's pretty cool. So it's a nice way of having interaction with your audience, plus it allows you to record fairly easily. Now, for those of you that are more advanced and are looking for more like the CDN solutions and things like that, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, Scale Engine, the guys that help bring us TextNet. If you want to go pro, go with these guys. I mean, if you're dead serious about a program and you have content and audience and, you really have something serious that you want to rely on in a serious way, this is where you want to be at. So I would definitely check that out. So that's really all there is to it. As far as the applications and all that sort of stuff that was used, I think the big thing to remember is use the video editing apps and the audio editing apps that work best for you. But for myself, audio, I'm a big fan of Audacity. For video, I'm a big fan of Kdenlive and OpenShot. If you have other applications that work well for you, you can do that. And of course, if you want to do your editing in Windows, that's an option as well. But the point of the segment is that you don't have to. You don't have to use OS X. You don't have to use Windows, but it just depends on how complex you want to get. And also remember, there's a service nowadays that we didn't have when I was podcasting, and that's called Fiverr. You can outsource anything you can imagine. If there's a type of introduction or type of logo setup you want to have done with people that have After Effects that you are not able to do yourself, you can still remain a Linux purist. Outsource that for $5 and you're good to go. That's something I've looked into in recent years, and I certainly wish was available back when we were doing some of the podcasts I was involved with. For those of you that are wondering what the podcast that I was working with back in the day, I will suffice it to say I'll provide the audio links to both of them. One of them is a little more entertaining than the other one. The other one was a very early attempt with a buddy of mine who will remain anonymous at podcasting. But the second one, I think, is one a lot of you may have heard of from some Tech TV folks. So we'll get that in the show notes. So really, that's all there is for the podcasting segment. If you have questions, feel free, especially regarding the podcast how-to stuff, hit me up with an email, go ahead and do Matt at JupiterBroadcasting.com. That's Matt, M-A-T-T, JupiterBroadcasting.com. Thanks for watching, guys.
Hey, Chris, let's talk about Fedora some more.
Fedora, Brian, and their new deal. Here, you gotta do an evil stroke of the beard. You got some stubble today, too.
I just got stubble. I haven't shaved in 3 days stubble, but you got the beard.
Yeah, so boy, did the internet light on fire this week or what? It kind of actually rang a little bit back to when Novell struck their big deal with Microsoft.
Yeah, man, I mean, what?
Well, it's actually a bit of a controversy over nothing.
Yeah,
in a sense. I'll get to that.
Like, I didn't quite get the controversy, but go ahead and explain.
So Red Hat will be cutting a check to VeriSign to sign Fedora for Microsoft's UEFI secure boot environment that they require all Microsoft manufacturers that are going to be ready to run, certified to run Windows 8 to have.
Okay.
So x86 or ARM. However, on x86, Microsoft had to make the concession where it could be disabled in firmware.
Okay.
But Fedora's looking at this situation and they're saying, okay, on ARM, if you make an ARM-based tablet that's supposedly going to be compatible with Windows 8 and it's just a generic PC tablet, it's got this secure boot environment, and if you don't have a signed bootloader by VeriSign, you can't load your executable on it.
Right, so they've got to get it signed by VeriSign.
And Microsoft, as this has been a process we've talked a little bit on the show a while ago. It's essentially a $99 fee that goes to VeriSign, not Microsoft. Once you've paid it, you can sign as many binaries as you want.
Yeah.
So they're going to sign a like a little tiny bootloader that's then going to launch Grub. He also Garrett from Fedora also confirmed that all drivers shipped with Fedora will be signed, and also mentioned that you can't sign out of tree drivers.
Okay.
So you download the NVIDIA driver, it's not signed.
Okay.
So you're not installing that, at least, and having it work with your securely signed kernel.
That's fine.
Fedora will be signing all kernel modules and locking down certain aspects of the kernel functionality. All of that lockdown goes away if secure boot is disabled in the firmware. It just all gets turned off. So if you have a secure boot environment with a secure boot kernel, you're not going to load unsigned modules and things like that.
Okay.
That seems a little weird, but all of this is summed up pretty well, actually, as to why they would agree to something like this, right? What would be Fedora's motivation? We've got a clip here of John Masters. He is the head of Fedora and Red Hat on ARM, and it's like there's like a 30-second spot. I don't know. We can just play it, and he'll kind of tell you some of the motivations, I guess.
There are certain things that are coming to ARM systems, and we need to make sure we're ready for them. We're not really in a position to say we don't want this, because it's going to happen. So the best thing to do is to say, okay, we know this is happening. Let's find a way to all get along within that.
So can it all get along, or some people have different ideas and they don't want to agree, or is there any problem, or everybody's going to... Are you sure everybody...
We'll cut away because it's kind of low. So what he's saying there is that, these deals are done. It's not so much an industry standard as it is a Microsoft standard that OEMs have to agree to if they want to ship Windows 8 on their product.
Right.
So Fedora's kind of looking at it going like, we are just kind of stuck here because we want somebody to be able to take a Fedora disk, put it in their machine,
and just run it,
and just expect it to work.
Yeah. No, that makes a certain amount of sense. I mean, obviously, this UEFI secure boot is kind of lame. I mean, it's just lame. I don't understand the point of it. I don't understand what people get out of it, other than it just seems like it's just kind of a dick thing to do.
Secured bootloaders, I guess. So that way.
Why does it need to be secure? What exactly do you get out of it being secured? Like making it so that someone can't come by with a thumb drive and boot off of a thumb drive.
Or you get
that's the only thing I can think of.
You get like somebody can't replace the kernel, or somebody can't do like a little.
But like, what is it? What do you get? Like, who gets any sort of benefit from that? Like, so if I buy a machine, like obviously the whole point is that my machine's more secure.
It's supposedly about being able to trust from top to bottom the software stack that everything's running on. So that way, if there's some sort of low level vulnerability,
it just has to be signed.
Huh?
It just has to be signed though.
Yeah.
And signing is easy, and you can fake it.
Dude, Stuxnet was signed.
Yeah, it's signed.
I know it's
dude.
It's
like a billion things are signed.
Yeah.
Signing is a complete joke that means absolutely nothing, as far as I can tell. From a technical perspective, there isn't anything there.
The problem is there's been a lot of lackadaisical authorities and things like that out there.
Even if the authority is hard and severe, it's fake. It's software.
Yeah.
You can work around it.
And there could be bugs.
Or you can fake it.
Yeah.
Or you can make it yourself. It doesn't matter. Like, none of it matters. It's irrelevant.
Here's another... Fedora 18 goes on to say that, or the folks from Fedora go on to say that Fedora 18 will be released around the same time as Windows 8. And this changes their perspective a little bit, because people are also going to have Windows 8 hardware shipping at the same time Fedora 18 is released. So they want to have this in Fedora 18, while Microsoft has modified the original position, and they, yes, x86 machines can have it turned off. It'll likely be turned on by default, and they can't expect users to go in there and alter a firmware setting in order to install Fedora.
You know what Linus Torvalds would say? They'd say if you make your system work well for stupid users, you're just going to get stupid users. Why not just tell people turn it off? That's what Linus would... I mean, that's what it seems like Linus would say. And it just seems like, I don't know, Fedora's not the end user distro. Fedora's Fedora, Well, like I kind of like if Canonical came out and said, you know what, we're going to do this because it just needs to work. I'd buy it. But Fedora, like, I don't have any problem with them doing this. But
I know it's a little low, but this next clip, this guy knows what you're thinking, and he challenges some of your assumptions.
All right.
So I'll see if I can't boost a little bit in post. But yeah, go ahead and play it.
Is that I'm working on the Fedora ARM project, which is sponsored by Red Hat and others, and what we're trying to do is to bring Fedora Linux to ARM systems and bring ARM to the same level of recognition as x86 in the Fedora space. So what I can personally do there is push people to challenge their assumptions around Fedora, challenge their assumptions around maybe where we were in the past, and try Fedora on ARM devices and help us to make that a success. So that's one of my main focuses.
Hopefully.
So he wants to go there. So he wants Fedora to be that distro.
He wants when you think of running on ARM hardware, you think Fedora.
Okay.
And
I get that. That makes sense.
People are speculating though that Canonical will also likely do this $99 purchase, and
again, I have no I don't if they go ahead and want to sign every last little bit. I mean, hell, you know what? Enough people donate. I'll open source Linux Tycoon. Fedora can go ahead and sign Linux Tycoon. You know what? I'm probably not going to sign Linux Tycoon.
Right.
Because that's the silliest thing I've ever heard.
I think
but if they want to go ahead and do it, they can sign
the software,
their text files if they want.
The packages don't have to be signed. It's really like
sign everything.
The bootloader.
We could sign libturbo JPEG because that's got to be signed.
Yeah.
We should probably start signing gedit. I've been really upset at the insecurity
you want to
of
make sure
gedit.
your
It's
gedit
just not signed.
You want it to be genuine.
I mean it's fine.
You have to be able to trust gedit.
It's not like a lot of money is changing hands here. It just the whole thing just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it just seems dumb. Like, from a tech perspective, nobody gets anything out of this. Like, not even Microsoft. Microsoft really doesn't even get anything out of this.
Well, they kind of
all they get out of this is a little bit of bad press, and they require people to push a button.
What I'm worried about is more like
which they already had to do anyway. I mean, if people were already going to install Linux on a Windows PC that came with Windows, are they really going to go, oh my God, no, I had to push that one button?
But okay.
I mean,
hold on. Let's back up. Let's back up to the early 90s. I
love the early 90s.
If this thing existed back then, you wouldn't be able to just...
Is the Proclaimers playing in the background?
Probably. You wouldn't be able to just write some code and then load it on a machine. I mean, this is...
Am I watching Back to the Future 3 right now?
Maybe 2, actually.
I'm watching Back to the Future 3.
Are you?
Yeah.
I can't remember at the time exactly.
You were pretty young back then.
You could back then load any operating system, any code you wanted on your machine. There wasn't some sort of gatekeeper.
Yeah, but then we got into the mid to late 90s, and we already started having that with the Itanium project between Microsoft and Intel. I mean, this is like project number 500 to lock down a BIOS to make it harder to run anything other than Windows.
That's true.
I mean, this happens like all the time, and every time it doesn't really go anywhere, and every time people get annoyed at it.
The worry is that they're kind of in at the ground floor with the transition over to ARM. Like, because ARM, it's locked down. Like, what if they had been able to pull that stuff off when x86 was introduced to the market?
It's not that locked down. It's like pseudo lockdown. It's like pretendy lockdown on a piece of hardware by piece of hardware basis.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it'll be broken. I know.
Mean, what happens if so what? 3 ARM-based desktops come out that can't run things that aren't signed, and then let's say Asus or Acer or something comes along and is like, you know what? I went in on this. I don't really want to pay because it's already a cheap, low-powered device. I don't want to pay Microsoft licenses, so I'm going to do what Asus did in the early days with the Triple E, and I'm going to ship KDE and Linux on this one. They're not going to go with it locked down, and then all of a sudden, none of them will be locked down.
I would say you're probably right. Although the biggest thing that would make UEFI not a success is if Windows 8 is a failure. If Windows 8 flops, then there won't be this hardware demand to have Windows 8 ready devices.
Dude, that's the thing though. Windows 8 can't flop. Have you seen how square those web pages are?
Yeah.
They are square web pages.
There's a big block.
Have you ever seen a web page that square?
I've never.
They're so square and so blue.
Yeah.
Without gradients.
Right.
And that's so important nowadays. And people are just going to jump all over that stuff. I mean, honestly, you know what? You make a really good point. Secured boot is going to be a success. We're all screwed because those web pages are the squarest. And that brings us to the end of this week's amazing broadcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt definitely good.
Amazing.
Definitely good.
Amazing.
Now, B-Man,
changes everything.
I want to take a viewer feedback. We're gonna try to maybe read some more feedback in this last segment.
All right.
And this was written in by Guest.
I don't like feedback though.
I know. No,
I don't like it when people say things.
This one was a little rough, but so
right,
Guest wrote in
it.
and he said, and he was talking about our Fedora 17 review. That review didn't say anything at all, except for one thing on the theming, and that it uses GNOME Shell. It doesn't say what makes it a good release or not. I noticed the same problem with past reviews, commentary without enough demonstration behind it.
I'm just going to say this. Your review, I felt, was lacking. I felt like you did not go into detail enough about what we did and did not say as to give me any decent real information to go on.
That's a pretty good response.
This is pretty typical of probably this person's general reviews.
I actually now there was actually George Zilla responded with a pretty good response. The review didn't say anything at all. Could be because there wasn't much to say. I struggled with Guest's point. The reason I picked this one is because I kind of felt like that Fedora 17 review. I was like, what are we really reviewing that we can relate to people that they really care about? And that is an area where when we sit down and we do Fedora 17 reviews, we kind of struggle like, this is good if you are a person who maybe uses Red Hat and doesn't mind these kinds of concessions but potentially likes this, and then also doesn't want to run one of these other distros like Arch, then Fedora is good for you. And like we sit here and struggle with that, and it is a hard thing. In fact, we've even considered not reviewing Fedora on the show.
We have.
But each distro, I think
we went farther than that. One time, I think about a year ago, I declared that I would never speak about Fedora again.
Well, that didn't
happen.
It depends, I think.
Fedora is important. I mean, you got to talk about it.
I would say what happens and what slots into the review depends on what the distribution does that we think the audience might find compelling.
Right. What is the distribution focusing on for that release?
Yeah.
Then let's try and focus on that one. And honestly, with Fedora 17, they focused on certain things. The marketing was a little bit different than in past releases.
They combined the user bin directories.
They combined the user bin.
And they extended 4 now goes to 16 terabytes or
Basically,
something like that.
we hit all of the key technical topics. That's really all there is to say on that. And then after that, it's our experience. Because in the past, our experience was less than stellar. So let's talk about our experience. And that's really what it comes down to for reviews.
It was, why is this one have a differential than the other
And
ones?
let's be honest. Whether you're using Fedora or SUSE or Gentoo or Arch or Ubuntu, you're going to get all of the same software if you want it. If you want it, it's Linux. It's so stupidly modular in a wonderful way that it almost doesn't matter. You could start with Fedora and you could probably manage to make it exactly like Ubuntu. If you spent enough time on it, you could make it work. You get all the packages in there, you make it work. So really, the particulars of that doesn't matter so much as the out-of-the-box experience, what sort of image is the distro trying to portray.
Philosophy or those kinds of things.
That's the important stuff.
Yeah. All right, B-Man. Well, I just want to give one last quick mention to the new show, The Unfiltered Show.
So what I'm saying is if you have an opinion, go ahead and shout it out.
You can email Linux Action Show,
email us,
Linux Action Show, Jupiter Broadcasting. You can leave a comment on YouTube. You can leave a comment on the show page, like a lot of people doing for Unfilter. I gotta say, I just mentioned it because I think some of my best work ever is going into the show. Ever. Some of the best work I've ever done is going into that show.
Ever.
So I'm pretty proud of it. So I want people to go check it out. Unfilter Episode 3, The Kill List. Brian, did you know 36 people have been droned since Wednesday? Actually, more than 36. 36 drone strikes since Wednesday.
I did not know that.
Well, that's in that episode. We talked about it a little bit.
And that's with the little helicarrier
No,
thing
not the cool
that
ones.
you can use the Android
No,
tablet.
these things are
fly
big.
Linux
These
powered.
drones are like almost like a big airplane. These are big freaking drones. They're strictly drones because there's nobody in them.
There's no one in them, yeah.
Man, they got missiles. They got all kinds of
I don't
stuff.
have any missiles.
They're pretty intense.
I don't have any missiles
They're
at
very
all.
high tech. Although a lot of them are controlled by Windows
I
XP.
hate that I don't have missiles.
I know.
Yeah.
You have to use Windows XP though to control it. So it's kind of.
See, is it worth it then?
I
I spent too much time with Windows XP in my life.
Yeah.
Administering Windows XP and dealing with
I've
users
moved
with
on.
Windows XP. I've moved on. I don't care. If I have free missiles with Windows XP, nope. Keep your stupid missiles. I'll go missileless.
Yeah. Something like that. All right, and just a reminder that the Linux Action Show is available in torrent. Yeah, you can torrent this show, and there's even an RSS feed for the torrents.
And if you put a Raspberry Pi on top of one of those little drones things, you could torrent it from there.
You could. Yeah. So if you want to help us out by saving some bandwidth and grabbing that torrent, you can do so. Just go over to the show notes along with the HD downloads, the OGG downloads, the audio-only downloads. You can find all that over at Jupiter Broadcasting, as well as links to everything we talked about today, including the long version of the video clips that we played
earlier.
And
Wow.
Matt's segment notes.
Longed.
Yeah.
Matt's.
Yeah. Anything else, B-Man?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, then that just about wraps up this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week.
Hey, Chris, let's talk about Fedora some more.
I think now we are ready for you to intro the segment whenever you'd like to do that when you're ready. Oh.